It's been a while, but we are finally back for round number two. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the return of the top class, the first race since Yuri's vacation, and we are back. We are here at the Shanghai International Circuit for the Chinese Grand Prix, the second ever top class fantasy era race, and it should be quite an exciting week ahead. I am JW97, and I am joined today by the current Ferrari test driver, Dennis Graff. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing fine. It's been a while since we had the OC, but finally we are back, as you said. How are you doing?
I'm doing a lot better than what I was on Saturday. For anybody who doesn't know, of course, I was suffering quite a lot with hay fever. Words of advice, do not get it. It absolutely sucks. I was suffering all of Saturday, but I'm glad to say I'm feeling a lot better. I've still got a little bit of it. I'm still coughing a little bit, but not as much as I was before. So I'm a lot better, and I'm ready to commentate, really. As you can see, we have got a bright and sunny day for practice. Whether that's going to be an omen for qualifying, that's going to be another question. But without further ado, let's get into the practice session, the second ever 40-minute practice session for the top class. And, well, there is a few things to get through because, well, of course, we have to rewind ourselves back to 3 weeks ago for the last time a top class race happened, which was, of course, the Australian Grand Prix. Wet conditions, of course, Dennis, but there was one man who prevailed, of course, and that's the man who took his previous 2 wins in wet conditions, Franco Gamba. He was just a monster in the wet conditions yet again, Dennis.
Yeah, indeed. He started from P7 and then overtook everyone who was ahead of him, including his teammate George Rogue, and then never looked back and won with over 1 minute ahead of Jesus Perinen. Yeah, that was some dominant performance.
Was indeed, and you come on to the topic of Perinen because, of course, in only his first ever race, doing something similar to what Lewis Hamilton and Kevin Magnussen did in real life, Jesus Perinen, in only his first ever top class race, managed to take his first ever podium, and he wasn't the only first ever podium finisher as well, because Chris Chatfield finally got his first ever podium last time out in Australia, and, well, it was just an amazing podium, wasn't it, Dennis?
Yeah, indeed, so many surprises. So many new faces on the podium, but yeah, it was a very great race to watch.
Indeed so, and we should be looking at hopefully a good race here in China, of course. Now, we do need to rewind back to a few weeks ago as well, because there is one driver that does carry a grid penalty for this race, that being Julius Anderson. Julius Anderson, of course, will have a 10th-place grid penalty that he'll have to serve for tomorrow's Chinese Grand Prix, so wherever he ends up in qualifying later on today, he will drop 10 places back. But if we're going to be totally honest, Dennis, nothing not to take away from Julius, of course, but given the pace that we've seen from the Aston Martin in both the Australian Grand Prix and, of course, pre-season testing, it's probably highly likely that Julius may start from last place for tomorrow's race.
Yep, that's very likely indeed, but there could be still things happening. For example, a great performance from Julius here in qualifying later on, or you could see some rain later on, which could shake up the grid even more.
Indeed, and who knows really what the weather could throw out, of course. But you never know with Julius. He could throw a little bit of a surprise, and he might not end up starting in last. He might put on a great performance in qualifying. We did have a little chat with Yuri just before the session began, and you know we talked about how some cars are more dependent on straight line speeds. Well, as you can see with this track, there's a very long straight, and given that we believe the Mercedes have got some good power underneath it still, and given the Aston Martin's got a Mercedes engine, who knows? It could propel the Aston Martin's a little bit further up the grid, but we won't. But we'll have to wait and see, of course, as Amar Khan is going to be the first to start a lap here in the Mercedes. And, of course, the Mercedes didn't exactly have the best Australian Grand Prix, but Amar Khan put on a good performance from 9th on the grid to finish in 4th position, but not exactly where Mercedes want to be, is it, Dennis?
Not really. The expectations are to win the championship, of course, again. And yeah, that wasn't the best season opener, but at least, especially for Lopez, at least scored some points. If you remember in the first lap, he spun out and dropped to last, I guess.
Yes, he did, and it wasn't the best start for the defending champion, of course, as he's looking to win a third World Championship. As we're now looking at Daniel Fraser in the Haas, and whilst we're on the topic of Haas, well, what a disaster for them at the last race at Australia. Of course, we talked about how much of a disastrous season they suffered last season, and they didn't really get off to the best of starts, really. Both Daniel Fraser and Amelia Wilson retiring from the race. Daniel Fraser suffering from mechanical failure, and Amelia Wilson involved in a crash that wasn't her fault, really. Not the best of starts for Haas.
Yep, indeed. But we've seen, think they have a better pace than last season, if we saw the qualifying. So there is some potential, but hopefully they will get a better weekend this time around.
Of course, coming into this week here at the Chinese Grand Prix, as we saw Franco Lopez having a little bit of a wobble, the spare car ban is now in effect, of course. That system obviously got worked out, but as you may have seen in the stream chat, as Yuri alluded to, Yuri is still relatively new to the system, so there could be still some mistakes from Yuri, but we'll have to wait and see, of course. But we know for a fact, if anybody's been watching the F2 streams, and I think in some cases the DTM streams, that Flo has also been using it as well. So for anybody who watched the F2 and DTM streams, you may get a clear indication on how the spare car ban works. So keep that in mind here for the top class. And because of that now that we've got the spare car ban, it means that both the injury system can now come into an effect for both for practice and qualifying, not just the race, of course. We've got some lap times on the board. Jake Galloway currently at the top of the timing sheets with a 1:33.335, but gets eclipsed by his former teammate Evan Byrne. And it was a bit ironic that we mentioned Galloway there, because of course a very good memory for Jake Galloway here last season, because this is the track where he took an unbelievable first ever victory in the top class in only his third Grand Prix, and given the pace that the Ferrari has shown so far this season, it could be a racetrack that could suit him quite well, and he really needs to get his season underway, because last time out in Australia it wasn't the best race for Galloway, only finishing in 10th with his teammate Chris Chatfield finishing up in third position. But as mentioned, Dennis, it was just an unexpected victory last season for Jake Galloway. In only his third race driving for Renault and in the top class as well, he managed to get his first ever victory.
I think shocking is the word which describes that victory, because it wasn't because of luck. The victory was because of pace, and that was the most shocking thing about it. So yeah.
Indeed, and well, could Galloway potentially take his second ever victory here at this track as well? We'll have to wait and see. So far, he finds himself in 8th behind teammate Chatfield again. But you know, the Renault seems to go pretty strong around here in the past, here in China. And who knows, really? Could Renault even maybe challenge for the win? We've seen that they've got some good pace at the Renault. So who knows, really? We could see Renault. I mean, we saw last week as well that they came close to getting pole position in Australia with Evan Byrne, until right at the end, of course, where Rahul Patel in the Lamborghini, to the shock of everyone, in only Lamborghini's first ever race, and his first ever race as well, took pole position. And who knows, really? We could be in for some shocks during qualifying a little bit later on as well, Dennis.
Yep. It's everything to play for. I think there are at least I don't know how many cars will be potential later on for pole, but it will be many. I can promise that. So yeah, that was absolutely shocking last time out.
Meanwhile, Garber has gone to the top of the timing sheet, the early championship leader, with a 1:32.195, proving again just how strong the Red Bull is so far. It's fair to say that probably the Red Bull, a lot of people have speculated that the Red Bull has probably got the best car on the grid, and so far Garber and Roke showing its potential, really. And straight out of the box, although it wasn't the best of races for Roke last time out in Australia, both of them showed just how strong that Red Bull package is.
Yeah, of course, Roke did managed to take the lead in the race after starting from third, which was very great to see for him. But yeah, then his teammate came through, then it derailed a bit for Rogue. But yeah, P5, it's still not bad, to be honest.
See, we are here at the Chinese Grand Prix, of course, and of course, one driver whose home Grand Prix it is Laura Chung, of course. Laura Chung, known for being probably one of the best overtakers in the series, it's fair to say, for the last few seasons. And of course, one of her best overtakes came at her own race back in 2018 when she performed that triple overtake down at this particular corner where the two McLarens are at the moment. And who knows, really, what surprises she could throw out, because, of course, last time out in Australia, she put on a very impressive overtake down at turn 3 as well. And ended up finishing in 6th. In fact, having better pace than Rahul Patel overall, who just, despite taking pole in qualifying, just seemed to struggle in the race before his retirement.
Yeah, seemed like his tires were going completely off. I think they speculated with at least 3 stops, but something went wrong there. The tires, his tires were absolutely gone. Yeah.
Yes, indeed they were. Meanwhile, Amelia Wilson in the Haas has just gone up into fourth position. Miklos Gallet currently in the top 10, and it's kind of a surprise that we're talking about Miklos Gallet in that sort of context, really, given what he's been able to achieve the last few seasons. Obviously, he's now at AlphaTauri, and so far, judging from what we've seen so far, the AlphaTauri doesn't exactly have some good pace. It might have some okay race pace, judging from what we saw with David Cupot last time around, but it seems so far on this track, we know that the Honda engine is pretty good in the back of that car, as we've seen with the Red Bull. So who knows really what the AlphaTauri could do around here, especially down that long straight. But so far, Dennis, it's not been very good for the team from Faenza.
No, not really. To be honest, I don't know what went wrong for them. So, yeah, as we've seen in Australia, guy was 3 laps down in the end, which was very disappointing for him. But I think he said even that he isn't expecting to be at the front immediately, so he's trying to build that car to be good in the next few seasons. So yeah, I think that's the waiting game a bit.
Yes, indeed. And of course, as he mentioned, when he signed with the team, he knew what sort of challenge he was going up with. Of course, I don't think he was expecting this sort of challenge with the AlphaTauri, but he knew what the challenge that he was going to face, and he's hoping to try and turn the team's misfortune around. Chatfield, meanwhile, has gone up into second place in the Ferrari, as Wilson further improves in fourth position. So far, Garber at the top by 4/10 of a second at the moment in the Red Bull. His teammate George Rowe currently down in sixth position. And Patel at the moment currently down in 20th. Now we saw this in Australia as well during practice. That it seemed that Patel was not exactly the best in practice, but he seemed to pick it up when qualifying really mattered. And who knows, could he be potentially performing a similar thing here? Do you think, Dennis?
That will be difficult, but I think Lamborghini is more likely to be better in qualifying than in race pace. So yeah, we need to look what happens later.
Indeed, as meanwhile, Gal across the line still remains in 11th position. Just looking at where the Mercedes are, they're currently just 10th and 14th at the moment. We've seen so far throughout the course of the from the first race, of course, and from pre-season testing, that it seems that the field spread around here is very, very close indeed. And we even got the likes of Franco Gamba even speculating that this could be a season similar to what we saw in the real-life MotoGP season in 2020, where every weekend it's just a little bit of a mystery as who's going to come out on top.
Yeah, that's but that's one good thing, I guess. So we don't need to expect the car that was on top last time to be at the top again the next race. So yeah, that's some interesting thing to look at.
Well, Joseph Willows has gone up into second place in the McLaren, and of course, Australia is a weekend that McLaren will desperately want to forget as well, because the one rule in racing is that you should never hit your teammate, and unfortunately, it seemed the McLarens didn't really get that memo. Really, Joseph Willows tagging the side of Kirishima De Rosa, which spun him around, and then because of the weird turning circle that we have on Grand Prix 4, it meant that Kirishima De Rosa ended up retiring from the race, really, and well, clearly, given the pace that we've seen for the McLaren, because it looks like the car has got potential. It's one race that they'll want to forget very, very quickly, Dennis.
Yep, for them, as I said, it wasn't very good with that collision. But yeah, it would have been worse if they would have left Australia with no points. But yeah, Willows just still managed to get 2 points, which isn't a disaster. But yeah, it could be way better.
Indeed, and of course McLaren will be hoping, as mentioned, to basically hope to get some higher points here in China. Speaking of a McLaren, one of them is about to be overtaken by Chris Chatfield, as we can see on the screen, or maybe not. Of course, it seems that the McLaren is going to stay ahead going into the hairpin. There's now right on board with the home favourite Laura Chung, who currently finds herself in 11th place at the moment in the Lamborghini. And as Chung will now make her way down towards the hairpin. And she'll be coming into the pits this lap, of course. As meanwhile, De Rosa gets up into 6th position in the McLaren, so currently 2nd and 6th for the two McLaren drivers at this point in time, as Chung makes her way through this long, swooping left-hander. As we have just over 27 minutes to go in this practice session. Of course, for anybody who is unfamiliar, of course, for this season, we've now upped the practice session from 30 minutes to 40 minutes to give us more talking time, really, the commentators, given that we are in the fantasy era, and it basically gives us a lot more to talk about, really, especially just from the previous races and also from performances that we've seen as well throughout the course of the season. In terms of performances, though, one person we do need to point out is Roland Motrin, of course. Of course, we talked about a little bit earlier on how the places. In fact, I'm going to hold off because we've got a mechanical failure for Andrea Federi, and this is where we could see the first. And yes, we could see if he pulls off to the side of the track. That's providing he does pull off to the side of the track and doesn't make it back to the pits. We could see the first case of the spare car ban being put into an effect. Let's see if Federi makes it back around first before we see if we have to put this into action. Yeah, first mechanical failure for Andre Federi. A loose wheel, not exactly ideal for the Alfa Romeo. Question is, though, can he get it back to the pits? That's going to be the question. Or will we have to see our first case of the spare car ban being implemented here for practice? And it looks like he's slowing now.
Yep.
Slowing. And
he's
a moment of
truth. He
truth.
will pull off, and yeah, he does.
Moment of truth. Let's see how this spare car ban is going to be put into an effect. So Federi's practice session has come to a close quite straight away. Not exactly the practice session he was looking for there, Dennis.
Yep, not really. He's currently in P17, which is not that good. But he would have hoped to have more running time. But yeah, it's a shame for him. And of course, he can't prepare much for qualifying, which could be a setback for him.
Indeed so. Meanwhile, as we were speaking there, Perinen has gone up into 3rd position in the Renault, as the marshals will now tow Federi's car back, hoist his car back over to the garage. And once they get the car moving, that is, it might take a little bit of a while, but luckily it is only practice. We don't need to rush too much. There we go. He's getting the car hoisted over the barrier, and we should see the spare car rule come into an effect. As Byrne, meanwhile, gets up into 4th place, so now it's 3 and 4 for the two Renaults. Now, let's see if this spare car ban is going to work then. So, as you can see with the mouse, well, you can't see it on your screen, but Yuri has got a mouse up on our Discord, and it shows that he's working on stuff to ensure that this spare car ban works. Speaking of Alfa Romeos, meanwhile, Quarg has actually got up into 7th place, and on the topic of Quarg, it was a very good return to the top class for Roman Quarg, finishing 8th in the Alfa Romeo, and well, it's a brilliant return to the top class, wasn't it, Dennis?
Yeah, indeed. Of course, for the 2020 DTM champion, it was, as I said, a good return with scoring points straight away.
Well, I am aware, judging from flow, that the car should be staying in the garage, judging from what I saw from F2 and DTM testing. So we'll keep an eye on the left-hand side on the timing tower to see if that becomes a thing. If it still says pit for Federi throughout a long period of time, then I think it's safe to assume that the system does work. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on that for you guys as we now ride on board with Chris Chatfield as Loa Chung is about to go out into the onto the track. In fact, a few cars are actually going to be doing that as well. As we now look back at Chris Chatfield, and well, a good performance last time out in Australia, as we talked about earlier. Dennis finally getting his first ever podium after missing out last time out in last season at AlphaTauri at America, and so far looks to be a man on form. Given that's what we saw from the Bahrain preseason test, he seemed to be a little bit off the pace, but he seems to be settling in now quite well at Ferrari. Dennis.
Yep, that is true, because I think he was very happy when he achieved that podium. I think it's clear. So yeah, that's some great pace that he's shown at Australia. Of course, beating his teammate by a lot in the race. So yeah, for him, it can continue like this.
Indeed,
at least he hopes for it.
Is Julius Anderson, and of course for anybody who's just joined us, a reminder of course with Julius Anderson, he will have to serve a 10-place grid penalty for this race, so wherever he ends up in qualifying later on, he will drop 10 places back. Judging from the pace that we saw from Aston Martin, it's probably more likely he's going to start in last, but you never know. He could spell a surprise. And on the topic of Aston Martin, one driver who did qualify last says, "Oh, Willows has had a crash, and so has
Oh,
AlphaTauri." So it looks like we've got a further 2 cars now that will have to join the spare car list there, Q-Pop and Willows. And well, their sessions have come to an end. It looks like they might have crashed, Dennis.
yep, that was not. We were not expecting this to happen, of course. But yeah, let's see what happened there. If they really collided and who crashed into who.
Well, we'll hopefully get a replay now then. Let's see. It looks like it might have been a separate accident, actually, because it looks like Evan Byrne was trying to find a way through on the inside of Willows, and he got collected with him. And just in the background, the Mercedes there collected David Cupok. That was Franco Lopez there. So 2 separate accidents there, which have involved in Cupok and Willows' sessions, coming to an end quite soon.
Yeah, the weirdest thing about that is that both these accidents happened in the same corner at the space of a few seconds. Yeah, that's weird.
So that will mean that both Willows and Cupok are going to have to get their spare cars sorted out here. So it looks like that they will have their looks like they will not be taking part in the session anymore. But I can say that judging from the fact that Videri's been in the garage for a very long time, I think it's safe to say that the system does work. So anyway, Willows and Cupok will not be taking any further part in this practice session. And so we're only going to have 19 cars left for practice. So not exactly, despite the fact that we've seen some good pace from Willows, not exactly the best of starts for the 2-time world champion.
No, not really, but his pace was promising. So yeah, that shouldn't be that bad. But yeah, qualifying is the big key to find out what really... yeah, I forgot what to say.
Indeed, and so that's that really. And so as we wait for Cupok and Willows' car to be hoisted over the barriers, and their session will be done with, and I'm pretty sure they will not have the best of words to say about Lopez and Byrne after that session. As meantime, it's currently a 2-3 for the 2 Renaults, as Perrin went up to 3rd and Byrne into 2nd. Carr, meanwhile, went up into 6th position, as Gao went into 15th there. As Cupok's car is now being hoisted over the barriers. It's going to take a little bit of a while to see Willows' car get hoisted over the barriers, but right, okay. So give a moment, guys. This is how the spare car thing works. It's nothing to do with the game crashing at all. Before anybody starts to assume that, but you can see from the screenshot, Gamba is actually 300 down on his personal best in the 2nd sector. So it seems that Gamba's setting some consistent lap times at the moment in the Red Bull, and we just got to wait for for Yuri to sort everything out to ensure that Cupok and Willows don't go back out, because he's already got it sorted with Videri, as you know, and ensure that there will only be 19 cars that will take part in this practice session for the remainder of the 21 minutes, as we are now back underway. We should be anyway, unless Yuri's just continuing to pause a little bit. No, it's just my Discord deciding to have a little bit of a screen freeze there, nothing to do with Yuri's game. Typical. Yeah, typical there with Discord. You can never be that reliable. Okay, so give us a moment, guys, as Willows is going to get hoisted over the barriers very soon. His might take a while to get over. Cupok is locked, and we should find Willows to be locked very soon, along with Videri. Obviously, Videri is already locked. Meanwhile, speaking of McLarens, De Rosa has actually got up into 5th position, meanwhile, so 4th and 5th now for the 2 McLarens is Roman Quarg in the Alfa Romeo, continuing his impressive return at the moment, currently in 9th position. I was going to talk about Aston Martin again, but it looks like every time I have a chance, something actually happens on the track. So, as I was talking there, Mottram didn't have the best of performances in Australia last time out, Dennis, and as a result, during qualifying, he ended up qualifying the car in last position. Not exactly the best of starts for him this season.
No, not really. Qualifying for him was absolutely terrible. He was very disappointed, I guess, with that. But the race, at least, was better for him. He managed to finish the race, even ahead of Felix Sonntag, which I think is okay, I would say. But yeah, of course, yes, Martin, as we've seen, is not fast, so they hope they will improve the course of the next few races or even here.
Meanwhile, Motrin has got up into 12th position, as we were talking about Aston Martin's there. Carr, meanwhile, has set a time identical to Jake Galloway. So both Galloway and Carr have set an identical time, but because Galloway set the time first, he's actually ahead of Carr. Meanwhile, Fraser is up on his personal best. Fraser currently in 20th position. His teammate Wilson currently in the top 10 at the moment. Where's Fraser going to end up in the Deutsche Post Haas? And he actually lost time in the last sector. He does not improve there. As we now look at Kirishima De Rosa, who's going to be the only remaining McLaren in this session. And so still waiting for Willis' car to be hoisted over the barriers at the moment. The marshals are there's still yellow flags down at turn number, I can't remember what turn number it is, but that's that really, as we have still just under 19 minutes to go in this session. As Jamie Griffiths will be starting his next lap. He just missed out on points last time out, did Jamie Griffiths at Australia, and putting on a very impressive performance. Obviously, we know that Jamie was very impressive last time out, as the yellows have now officially gone. So Willows' car has finally been hoisted over the barriers, and that will be his session done with as a result of that crash. But as I was saying there, Jamie Griffiths just missing out. I'm locked, so not locked in a prison cell. I am locked from the session. But as I was saying, Jamie Griffiths. Jamie Griffiths just missing out on points last time out in Australia, but again, just like last season, putting on a very good performance, Dennis, given the fact that Williams hasn't exactly been as good as we were expecting it to be.
Yeah, for him it was a very good performance in Australia, only just finishing one position off the points, also being only one lap down, which is quite good. So yeah, for him it was quite good season opener, and he hopes he can continue with that here.
Indeed so. As meantime, Jake Galloway has got up into 5th position in the Ferrari now, so he splits the two McLarens. And whether Joseph will stay in the top 4 for the remainder of this session, we'll have to wait and see, because of course he can't take part for the remainder of it due to the fact that he's had a crash. And of course we now have the spare car ban in action for anybody who's just joined us. As for Fraser, meanwhile, across the line, no improvement, stays where he is. As Roke improves, burning up into 12th position. I wonder if he's being held up by Fraser. There is actually a Red Bull in the mirrors of Daniel Fraser, so I'm going to imagine there's more potential to come from George Roke in this session. And speaking of hold-ups, Galloway's getting held up by one of the Renaults, as Galloway has a little bit of a moment there going through into the hairpin. Chung, meanwhile, the home favourite, gets up into 11th position, so just outside the top 10 at the moment is Laura Chung, and she'll be helping, of course, to put on a show in front of her home fans. Of course, she kind of regards this as the first of 2 home races, of course, because for anybody who doesn't know, Laura Chung recently acquired a British citizenship, so she's now a citizen of the UK, so in a way Silverstone is also classed as a home race for her as well, so she's got 2 home races to basically look forward to there, really. As here is Daniel Fraser, meanwhile, again up on his personal best in the first sector, but again, as we talked about a little bit earlier on, currently holding up George Roke at the moment, who probably has a little bit more potential once he gets some clear air in front of him. Lopez improves, but stays in 14th at the moment, so Roke and Lopez not having the best of sessions so far. And for Franco Lopez, I might as well talk about him as well. We talked about earlier that he obviously spun out on the first lap in Australia and made its way back up into 7th place, but we might as well talk about him because, of course, last time out, he obviously failed to get into Q3 last time out. We saw it a couple of times from him last season, Dennis, but again, it seems that this little qualifying curse that Lopez has come back to haunt him, and given that the Mercedes is not as dominant as we saw last season, and there's a lot more competition surrounding it this season, it's not exactly the best way to go about it, and he'll be hoping to get into Q3 this time by Dennis.
Yeah, he hopes that, but it won't be that easy, because we have that many cars, that many good cars also competing for the 10 slots in Q3. So yeah, it will be interesting to see if Lopez makes it this time around, or if he fails to make it to Q3 like last season.
Indeed, as Laura Chung, meanwhile, the home favourite, has gone into the top 10. She moves up into 9th position, as Roke, as we were talking there, has finally been able to get by on Daniel Fraser, with Fraser, of course, coming into the pits this lap. As Fraser now then will make his way around the long swooping right-hander now, left-hander, sorry, and then into the right he will now go. As now he will make his way in towards the double left-hander on the track, and of course he'll be coming back into the pits this lap. Of course, Haas are desperate to actually finish a race this season. Of course, they're the only team so far not classified in the Constructors' Championship as a result of both Fraser and Wilson retiring at the first race in Australia. And as Dennis alluded to a little bit earlier on, it does seem that the Haas is a lot better compared to last season, but still not ideally where they want to be at this point in time. And obviously, it seems to be more work that's needed to be done on the Haas side of things, as Daniel Fraser will now make his way down towards the hairpin before he'll make his way into the pit. So we're just under 15 minutes to go in this session. This is what the leaderboard currently looks like then. It is Franco Gamba at the top of the timing sheets, with Evan Byrne in second, Jesus Perinen in third, followed by Joseph Willows in fourth, Jake Galloway in fifth, followed by Kirishima DeRosa in sixth, Chris Chatfield, seventh with Almar Carr, eighth, Laura Chung in ninth, then it is Roman Quag in 10th, Franco Lopez in 11th, with Amelia Wilson in 12th, Roland Motrin in 13th, George Roker's gone into 14th, with Julius Anderson 15th, Miklos Gau in 16th position, Jamie Griffiths 17th, Andre Videri 18th, Felix Sontag in 19th, with Daniel Fraser in 20th, then it is Rahul Patel in 21st, and David Kupok in 22nd position. Of course, Willows, Videri, and Kupok will not take part for the remainder of the practice session as a result of a mechanical failure for Videri and a crash for Kupok and Willows, and as a result of the spare car ban now being a thing, it means they can't take part for the remainder of the session. As we were speaking there, Chatfield gets up into 6th position, so both Ferraris currently find themselves in 5th and 6th position, as the two Williamses will now come across the line. The BWT Williamses, Sontag does improve, and nor did Jamie Griffiths behind either, as Sontag now makes his way through the first few turns. That's now he's just making his way through the section of corners now then. And he will be coming into the pits this lap, in fact, and I'm not sure if Jamie Griffiths will be too happy with the fact that he's currently holding him up at this point in time. Now, we might as well talk about something that we can reveal, a little bit of an exclusive for you for the OC, because we got told this officially by Yuri before the stream began, but we can confirm to you right now that the 2021 Indianapolis 500 sign-ups will open this week. We did say that it was going to open either after the Australian or Chinese Grand Prix, and we're at the Chinese Grand Prix now, so we can confirm that the Indy 500 sign-ups will open this week. It will either open either on Thursday or Friday, so just bear that one in mind. And are you looking forward to the Indy 500 once again, Dennis?
Of course I am. That was a very exciting race, as always. I'm looking forward to see how it goes this year. Of course, if they sign up 5 drivers already in, but of course they need to sign up to get in. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yes, I do know indeed. The people who finished in the top 5 last season, of course, will obviously get automatic entry into the 500, providing, of course, that they sign up, of course. If they don't, then they miss out, of course. I will remind you who those top 5 drivers are, as I've got the Wikipedia up on my screen. The top 5 who will get on automatic slot in, should they sign up, of course, is Florian Volker, Daniel Fraser, Maxim Titkov, Tobias Kress, and you, Dennis Graf, as well, because you finished 5th last season. So as long as you sign up, you should get a space into this season's Indy 500. So I guess that's a bonus for you. Are we expecting maybe the Graf remover car like we saw last season, Dennis, or are you planning something else this time by? Going to keep that one close to your chest?
No, I won't keep it close to my chest. I think I will do. I won't do a custom livery this time because I have automatic entry, so I can pick what I want, and I will get it quite easily. So, but next year I have something in mind, but something different.
We'll see. Of course, it depends, of course, if you do make it into next year's Indy 500 as well. Of course, you'll be in it this season, provided you sign up, of course, because you finish in the top 5. A reminder, of course, of when the Indianapolis 500 is going to take place. Of course, it will take place in between the Top Class Monaco and French Grand Prix, and that date you need to look for as well, of course, is the 11th. That's the wrong year. What am I talking about? That's the year I'm looking for. I accidentally read out last season's date there by mistake. The 2nd to 3rd of August is the date for this season's Indianapolis 500, unless I've made an error on the Wikipedia page. I'll just quickly double check. I don't think I have, because I know I had to alter it the other day. No, that is the correct date. The 2nd to 3rd of August is the Indianapolis 500 this season, and so yeah, the first weekend of August, Indianapolis 500 action is underway. Well, the first week of August, I should say. Exciting times ahead, of course. But of course, for anybody who needs a reminder, of course, it is no way linked to the new World Champ Car series, of course. Obviously, Indy 500 is acting as a separate entity to the World Champ Car because, of course, as you know, ovals don't actually work on Grand Prix 4, hence why we do the Indy 500 race on NR 2003. And because ovals don't work on the World Champ Car scene, it's not going to act it's going to act as a separate. That's the reason why it's acting as a separate thing to World Champ Car. So the sign-ups, of course, for anybody wondering, is going to act the same way as it has done in previous seasons. So you don't need to worry about the threat of World Champ Car. Of course, it's only open to people, of course, who are currently racing in any of the current series that are in, or have been in or have raced in the OC in the past, but currently aren't in a series right now. So the likes of Nathan Ormond, who is hoping to get into the entrance series, of course, or even the likes of I'm trying to think of another driver as an example. Who's another one?
Southgate.
Christoph Baranek is another one as well. Christoph Baranek is another example as well. They're also eligible to compete in the Indy 500, along with Renz Jans and Alex Southgate. Although they're not in a series at the moment, or some hoping to get in the entrance series, they will also be eligible for the Indy 500. So you don't need to worry about that. But anyway, we have just under 10 minutes to go in this session, and George Roque now then makes his way down towards the hairpin now then, as he's 3 tenths down in the first sector, 900ths off his personal best, and once again getting involved in traffic, although this time in the form of the Mercedes of, I believe that's Armar Car that's in front of him at the moment, as we are getting into the closing stages of this practice session. So far, Garber still at the top, like he has been for the majority of this session, and so far, the Renaults, it's fair to say, Dennis, looking at the practice session, whether this is going to be a omen for qualifying later later on, the Renaults looking very strong again, it's fair to say.
Yeah, they're looking very strong with P2, P3. They're having shown some good pace here in practice, but practice is practice, and they, of course, need to do well in qualifying as well, so there could be some changes if they don't perform as well as here in practice.
Indeed so, as Roque just makes his way out of the hairpin now then, before he makes his way down towards the 90-degree left-hander, which will be the final turn, and he will cross the line. Looks like Car, in fact, is starting to pull away a little bit from George Roque. I don't know if he's just doing race simulations in this session a lot, because Roque at the moment only in 14th place in this session. And speaking of that Mercedes, which is on my car, he gets up into 8th position. So far, the Mercedes are currently finding themselves in 8th and 10th position, as Roque had to leave the door a little bit open there, because Julius Anderson, the man who replaced him at that team, let's not forget, that is George Roque's former team. They were previously known as Racing Point. The man who's replaced him at that team, Julius Anderson, was the guy who just came out of the pits there, as Lopez is now trying to find a way through on Felix Sontag. And Sontag currently in 21st position, but we know for a fact that that will be at least the highest he'll get in this session, unless he goes a little bit higher in this session. We know at least that that will be the bare minimum he'll finish in the session, because we know that David Kupak is not taking part for the remainder of the session due to the fact that he was involved in the crash. And for anybody who is still only just joining us and is not aware, of course, we do have now the spare car ban in effect from this weekend, and hence why Willows, Videri and Kupak are not out on track because they were involved in separate incidents during this. Videri, of course, had a puncture, I believe it was, a mechanical failure of some description. Loose wheel, close enough. And Willows and Kupak were involved in separate crashes. Kupak getting taken out by Franco Lopez, and Willows was taken out by Evan Burns. So that's why you won't be seeing those three for the remainder of this session. And for anybody who watched the F2 and DTM streams would have been familiar with how this system works, but it's the first time that you're seeing the top class using it. As Franco Lopez now then makes his way around the long sweeping right-hander before he makes his way through the double left-hander now then. And Lopez at the moment currently in 10th position, desperate to have a better weekend than what he did at Australia. And of course, one thing to note, I hope you enjoyed the new style GP4 OC highlights, and it seemed from what I gather, a majority of you do like the new intro as well. So thanks for that, because I know I was under a lot of pressure with that. So thanks for that. As so I hope you guys enjoyed the new look, and that should be a theme that you should expect throughout the majority of the season. So anyway. As Armar Car now then currently getting stuck behind Roland Motra in the moment, so even Car now coming up to some traffic of his own, and so as they now make their way through the section of corners, and Car of course is currently in 8th position at the moment, of course finished 4th last time out at the Australian Grand Prix, after coming back from 9th on the grid, and looking to see if he can actually have a better weekend here in China. Maybe even try and challenge for the win if he can, depending on if the Mercedes is able to do that this week. As Fraser, meanwhile, gets up into 14th position, so 12th and 14th for the two Haas drivers. Fair to say Haas currently having a decent session today at the moment, being in 12th and 14th. Of course, we saw a little bit earlier on that Amelia Wilson was in the top 10 for most of this session. Only now she slipped out of the top 10, but I think she'll be pretty happy with those efforts. But again, she'll be hoping that that she can put the disappointment of Australia behind her and finally finish the race, of course. As we look now at Roland Motrin, he's finally been able to overtake Armand Carr, and it's ironic that we're going to talk about Roland Motrin, or a bit of a coincidence that we looked at Roland Motrin there, because, well, we talked about how he's never been able to win a race so far in his career, and last season we talked about how it was a shocking win for Jake Galloway, but it could have been somebody else that could have got their first ever win here in China. That was Roland Motrin. He had the race under control, and then through no fault of his own, he crashed out as a result of a mechanical failure that happened with Dudu Kirby as Jake Galloway goes off the track there. So we'll have to come back on Roland Motrin there a little bit, but Galloway has spun off the track. Now, has he kept it going? Has he got it beached? Because if he has got it beached, that's going to be a problem with him with this car, as Jake Galloway now spins it back around and is able to get going again. But let's I think we're going to take a look at a replay of what Jake Galloway did, last season's winner here in China, as he was being hounded by one of the Renaults, in fact, his former employees. And yeah, just looked like a little bit of oversteer there, Dennis.
Yep, just had to correct oversteer, yeah, then slid off the track. It's easy as that.
Yeah, indeed. So far, he's in 5th position, so I mean, as I mentioned earlier on, Roland Motrin, of course, crashed out here last season when he was looking good to take the victory here. And, well, it's safe to say that people were extremely gutted when that happened, Dennis.
Yeah, for a good reason, because, yeah, he was so unlucky when it happened. He had the race under control, and then he had to park his car and bounce back on the track, and Motrin couldn't avoid it. So yeah, for him, it was a big shame.
Yeah, indeed, and given the pace of the Aston Martin, I think it's probably unlikely he's going to challenge for the win this season, but you never know. Miracles do happen in the OC, and who knows really. As meanwhile, we're looking at Kirishima DeRosa in the McLaren, currently up on his personal best in the first sector. Carr, meanwhile, has improved, but he's remained in 8th position. Chung currently finding herself, as she mentioned earlier in the stream chat, in a Mercedes sandwich. DeRosa's still up on his personal best, but it does look like he's lost some time, in fact, in the middle sector. Only 2 thousandths up on his personal best, so I'll have to wait and see what his third sector is like to see if he does improve on this lap. And so he's not got that much window really to make a mistake if he wants to improve on this lap really, as DeRosa now then makes his way down towards the hairpin now then. He gets the car around the right-hander now then, as DeRosa now then will make his way towards the final corner. As Gal meanwhile improves but stays in 17th position, so again another dreadful practice session for the AlphaTauris. As DeRosa, can he improve on his lap? And no, he can't. He lost more time in the last sector, and he remains in 7th place at this point in time. His teammate Joseph Wells, despite crashing out earlier, still up in 4th position, so it does show the potential that this McLaren has got. Obviously, their race, given they were a little bit out of position last time out in Australia, they weren't able to really perform at the level that the McLaren can really. But if they can get themselves a good qualifying here in China, who knows really, they could be fighting towards the front this season. We mentioned earlier during practice, during the pre-season testing, that 6 cars could realistically fight for a victory this season. Maybe Lamborghini if they get lucky, McLaren, Renault, Ferrari, Mercedes, and even Red Bull could challenge for victories this season, but we'll have to wait and see on that, of course. Anderson, meanwhile, the man who's serving a 10th-place grid penalty in this race, with just over 2 minutes to go, he's going to cross the line and goes up into, in fact, improves, but remains in 6th position. He actually didn't gain a place there. Patel, the man behind, currently down in 19th, but we saw this in Australia as well. He was off the pace in practice in that session, but picked it up in qualifying, maybe just doing some race simulations in that Lamborghini. Who knows really. Of course, only their second ever race this for Lamborghini, and already they've been able to achieve something that most new teams wish they could, which was get pole position in their first ever outing. As Barg will just get one more lap in, as you can see, he's given himself enough time, but we're now going to ride on board with the drivers for the remainder of this practice session, as Gao just comes out of the final turn now then, and the 2009 world champion, of course, won here in 2009. Crosses the line now then and does not improve. Stays where he is at the moment, as Garber has been done for the remainder of the session. Garber back in the pits, as I just said, unless he's actually coming out, in fact, to just do some mileage. I think he's actually just coming out to do some mileage. I might be wrong on that. His teammate George Roke will get a clear on, and we'll see if he can get himself close to Garber's time, or whether he's just doing more race runs. We'll have to wait and see. But Roke starting his lap now then, as he now crosses the line and starts his lap now then. So now we look at Felix Sontag now then. He's just going to come across the line, and Sontag crosses the line and he does not improve. Lopez just giving himself one more flying lap for the session. Same with Daniel Fraser. Anderson's coming back into the pit, so his session is done with. Patel now actually up on his personal best, so let's see if he can actually get a little bit more higher than 19th position. The man who of course took pole position at the Australian Grand Prix, to the shock of everyone. Just nearly a 10th up on his personal best, so he might not actually gain any positions judging from that, but let's see. As Patel now then comes across the line, the Indian driver is now going to finish his lap, and he does improve but stays in 19th position. Here comes Evan Byrne in the Renault. A strong session for the French team based over in Enstone in England. He does not improve, stays in second position. Roland Motrin giving himself one more lap before the session comes to a close, as we've got 16 seconds left on the clock. As Quark now then comes towards the right-hander now then, as 7 seconds left, 6, 5, and then it's 4, then it's 3, then it's 2, and then it's 1, and 0. Checkered flag is out. That is the end of the session. I presume Motrin is the last one who did cross the line in the end. I don't think there was anybody else right behind him that we couldn't see there. Quark crosses the line, no improvement, stays where he is, as Wilson comes back into the pits, as I think Chatfield just crossed the line but didn't improve on his lap. Here comes Kibashima De Rosa. Across the line he will go in the McLaren, and he goes up into 7th in fact. No, stays in 7th, doesn't improve on his time. Roke is on improving. Let's see if he can get close to Garber before the session comes to a close, or whether he's just doing a race simulation. Roke now then comes down the pit straight, and across the line will go the British Red Bull driver, and he goes up into 2nd, so it's a Red Bull 1-2 by the end of this practice session. Felix Sontag now then in the Williams comes down the pit straight, and across the line he will now go, and he does not improve, stays where he is. Lopez not on an improvement either, and I don't think Fraser behind is as well, as Lopez now then comes towards the final corner, and onto the pit straight now then will go the two-time world champion, the defending champion as well, Franco Lopez, down the pit straight, and across the line will go the Argentine, and no improvement, stays in 11th position. Fraser doesn't improve, stays where he is for the moment. Patel again on an improvement. Let's see what he can do on this lap, as the Lamborghini driver now then comes down the pit straight, and across the line will go the Indian driver, and he goes only up into 18th by the end of it, as Byrne is now coming down the pit straight. Motrin is just behind. He's the last one to cross the line. Byrne does not improve, and Motrin, the last one to cross the line, crosses the line, no improvement, stays where he is. And that's practice done with Garber at the top, Roke in 2nd, and Byrne in 3rd position, followed by his teammate Perinen. So what did you make of that session overall, Dennis?
Yeah, it was quite exciting session, with some things that happened, with that loose wheel for Federi and the 2 crashes. But yeah, one thing that's safe to say, I think the spare car ban is working.
Yes, it is, and well, it's going to be something to keep an eye on throughout the course of this season, it's fair to say. But that's it for practice then. A pretty interesting session, but we're just going to take a brief pause for the moment and then start a new stream for qualifying. But for the meantime, I've been JW97, he's been Dennis Graff, and we'll see you in just a little bit for the qualifying session. See you in a bit.